like I explained last week, and now I will say it in a nutshell. Just like the name of the Father was lost, so was the name of the Son. And it wasn't lost just by chance. It was lost because of commandments of men, like the Pharisees, for instance. It was lost because of, well, in the case of the name of the Father, prohibitions from the Greek emperor. Then came the Pharisees and decided to keep that prohibition and not mention the name. The name was lost. Then Messiah came. He taught the name. And after he taught the name, he was killed. He resurrected. He left. And after that, the Pharisees began to forbid the apostles from preaching the name. So just like they forbade the people from pronouncing the name of the Father, then they did the same from pronouncing the name of the Son. Mainly because the name of the Father is in the name of the Son, as I already explained last week a lot. So the name of the Father is in the name of the Son, so they wanted to change the name of the Son so that the name of the Father would not be pronounced with it, Yahushúa. So they changed it, just like they changed through the vowel points. They wrote vowel points of Elohim into the letters of Yahweh. They did the same with the name Yahushúa. So they turned it into Yehoshua so that people would not pronounce the name of the Father Yahu. Then, like I already said, they changed it to Yeshu, which is a Jewish curse. Then they added an A to turn it into a actual Hebrew word, which means salvation. But as I have explained, salvation by itself doesn't save. We need the salvation that comes from Yahweh. And that's why it is important that we understand that it is Yahushua, not just Yeshua, which would be salvation. Yeah, but like I said, that Yeshua name comes from the fact that they started to use a curse as his name, Yeshu, as you can find it in the Talmud and the Toldot Yeshu, which I already mentioned and explained a little bit the story that they write in that book. So after Yehoshua, they wanted to take all the name and by at the same time curse him, according to them. So they went from Yehoshua to Yeshu, then Yeshua. Then came the Greeks. They saw the name Yeshu. They didn't have the sound of the shin, and they add the letters US at the end if it's a male, the word or name in this case, and they add a SUS to give honor to Zeus, who, as we know according to scriptures in the book of Revelation chapter 2, when talking to Pergamon, we see that Zeus is Satan, Lucifer. So they added the words SUS since they didn't have the shin sound, and since they were turning it into a Greek name, and they came up with the name Jesus. And then after Jesus in the 17th century, the letter J was created, and then the name was Jesus. After that change in the 17th century, all the Bibles that were obviously originally written in Hebrew and then translated to Greek started to be translated to Latin, and then in our time to Spanish and English. So that all that time made it so that the words in the scriptures would change, starting with the most important words, which are the name of the Father and the Son and the titles that we use to refer to him. And why is that so important? Because he did not give us idols. He did not give us images in order to follow him or to worship him or to know who he is. He gave us his name to worship his name. He said he would put his name in the temple. He would put his name in us. He would send his name. His name would fulfill his will, etc., etc. So he gave us his name, and that's why Satan since he knows the importance of it, wanted to replace the name of the Father with his own name, and that's what he did throughout the years. So, by doing the translations, and while doing the translations, adding commandments of men, adding prohibitions from these people and those people, then came the translators who did not understand those prohibitions, so they started to translate the name, for instance, Yahweh, with the vowels of Adonai and Elohim, so they came up with words that did not exist, nor the Jewish people or Yahudim that did that originally intended. But because of misunderstanding, because of lack of knowledge, as it is written, for lack of knowledge my people are destroyed, because of lack of knowledge regarding certain key points. For instance, 1 Corinthians 6:11 says, and such were some of you, talking about those who practice sin. Some of us were in sin before coming to Messiah. I would say all of us, right? Because as we know, there's no man that does good and never sins, that does always good and never sins. Basically, the fact is that all man has sinned at least once because of the Yetzer Hara in our flesh. And the only man that has not and will not ever, because he already died and resurrected perfect, is Yahushua the Messiah. So it says, but you were washed, but you were set apart, but you were justified. But you were justified in the name of the sovereign Yahushua and by the Spirit of our Elohim. So we see here one of those many examples in which it doesn't just say you were justified through the Messiah or you were justified by Yahushua. It says you were justified in the name. In the name. Then 1 Corinthians 5:4, in the name of our sovereign Yahushua HaMashiach, when you are gathered together alone with my spirit, with the power of our sovereign Yahushua the Messiah. We must gather in his name. That's why Messiah said that whenever there are 2 or 3 gathered in his name, he will be with them. 1 Corinthians 1:2, this is basically when Paulus is saying hi to the congregation. He says, to the congregation of Yahweh which is at Corinth, to those who are set apart in Messiah Yahushua, called to be set apart, called to be Kadoshim, with all who in every place call on the name of Yahushua HaMashiach, our Adon, both theirs and ours. So look at what separates us, makes us set apart from all the congregations of the world called churches. And you know I don't use the word church to refer to the right congregation because it is actually connected to a false deity. So what separates us, one of the things, and basically the main thing, the starting point that separates us from false doctrines, from the many thousands of doctrines that are within Christianity, that same umbrella, we see that what separates us is the fact that we call on the name of the Messiah. It says, to those who are set apart in Messiah Yahushua, called to be Kadoshim, with all who in every place call on the name Yahushua HaMashiach, our Adon, our sovereign, both theirs and ours. In Ephesians 5:20 says, giving thanks always for all things to Yahweh the Father, in the name of our sovereign Yahushua HaMashiach. The importance of giving thanks for all things, because as Romans 8:28 says, all things are for the good of those who love Yahweh. So we must give thanks always for all things to Yahweh, the Father, in the name of our sovereign Yahushúa, in his name. Philippians 2, this is a key verse. Verse 9 says, therefore, Yahweh also has highly exalted him, talking about his son, the Messiah, and given him the name, not just a name, the name, which is above every name. So, just with this, the name, singular, not the names or the name plus those versions that they want to make, or the name plus nicknames. No, the name, one word. That's it. So we cannot be Yahushua, Yehoshua, Jesus, Jesus, Yeshu, Yeshua, Yeshua, Yahusha. It cannot be all those. It can only be one, because it's one that is above all. And yeah, there are people in Latin America called Jesus. The name Yahushua is above those names and above every single other name. So, therefore, Yahweh also has highly exalted him and given him the name which is above every name, that at the name of Yahushua, every knee should bow. There is no way out of it. And all those people that claim that it doesn't matter, or even dare to go against it and call it blasphemous to say that it is important, or whatever they want to say, they will eventually have to accept it, look upon him, and bend their knees. That at the name of Yahushua every knee should bow, of those in heaven, and this is important for other teaching, but it is important to keep in mind because it has to do with the lies that we have been taught throughout our lives, in school, even, of course, religion, TV, and all of that. We see something here in this verse that we normally don't hear, but there's some information out there that you can read that would confirm this fact that we're about to see. It says, of those in heaven, every knee should bow, of those in heaven, like the angels, of those on earth, like humans, and of those under the earth, And even though, as I have explained and we have seen in scriptures, Sheol, which is where the souls go, Sheol, when it comes to space, is under earth. Paradise, under where the temple would be. Hell, right next to it, where the valley of the son of Hinnom is, called Gehinnom. So, space-wise, that's where it is, but in another dimension. One could say, yeah, it includes all dimensions, of course, because we're also talking about heaven, even though, as we know, the second heaven of Lucifer is not as spiritual as most people know, since Nimrod wanted to go in, and Yahweh realized that Nimrod was going to be able to do it, so Yahweh came down, or sent an angel basically, to change the languages so that people would not understand each other and would stop trying to get into the second heaven. So, here we see that not only there are creatures with knees that should be bent before the name of Yahushua, not only in heaven or on earth, but also under the earth. However, if we include paradise and Sheol, where the souls are, and we read this verse again, we see that it's talking about a knee bending, and souls don't have knees because they don't have bodies yet. So once every soul gets a body, yeah, they will bend their knees before Messiah. My point is that this is talking about other type of creatures, not souls of men in Sheol, but it's talking about certain creatures, basically could be like the angels. Some say are descendants of Cain. Some say are the fallen angels that came down first with Samael, which I guess that's the most uh, possible, perhaps, for several reasons. And there are some others who say there are basically like aliens that instead of coming from other worlds actually come from inside the earth. And as we know, those who come appearing to be aliens are actually fallen angels. So we go back to the same idea that it could be those fallen angels that are under Samael, or fallen angels that came down with Shemhasa and Azazel in the book of Hanok. Well, those are actually, those right there are in prisons in Sheol. So those that would be under it would be all the type of angels that fell at some point in time. That was my point. So it says, every knee should bow, of those in heaven and of those on earth and of those under the earth, and that every tongue should confess. So not only every knee should bow before the name, not only before him, but before the name that is above every name. So it is only one name. Not only every knee should bow, but it says here, and that every tongue should confess that Yahushúa HaMashiach is Adon, is sovereign, king, to the honor of Yahweh the Father. So Yahweh loves his son. And when he sees that humans for whom he died love him, he is pleased. So this time, when every single human being and every single creature will realize who Messiah is, because as it is written, the world was created by him, yet when he came to the world did not recognize him. Because of that point, because the world was created by him. So the world did not know him, because came out from him, but was not him. I hope that's clear. So when he came, he was foreign to this world. That's why the world did not accept it, because this is a world of darkness. So he being the light is as if a blind person were to be in front of a huge lamp, yet because of his blindness, for him wouldn't mean a thing. So that was the world, was blind in darkness. When the light appeared, did not accept it, because could not recognize, could not understand the light. And it's obvious, being the darkness cannot understand the light. In John 1, it says, in the beginning was the Word. In the beginning was the Word. Remember that in Revelation 19:13, it says, we already read it, I believe. In Revelation 19:13, it says that the name of the Son is the Word of Yahweh. So the Word of Yahweh is the name. That's why the name is so important. When he said that everybody should bow and confess the name, it's a saying every knee should bow to the word of Yahweh. And there are so many important things that we can say there, because every knee should bow to be obedient to the Almighty, to his will. And all of that is in the actual word of Yahweh, who is Messiah in the flesh, who fulfilled his will and did not go against him in any way. So he is the Word, his name is the Word made flesh. So in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim. Remember, it is written, in the beginning Elohim created the heavens and the earth. So now John is writing almost in the same way as in Genesis, trying to teach us something deeper. Or, well, Genesis is way deep, so trying to show us something even higher than what we may understand at first glance from reading Genesis 1. It says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim. And the Word was Elohim. This may be a bit mysterious. Remember, first of all, Elohim is a plural word. It means mighty ones, as in several. That's why Yahweh was with his son, for instance, and that is Elohim. So Yahushúa was with the source of all power, and Messiah, the Word, was that source, because that's how Yahweh made it. So that all power that comes to all other realities that he created would receive that power from his son, so that every reality would honor his son. Something else, remember, Elohim, by being a plural word, not only means the Father and the Son, it also means the Father as him being, I repeat, the source of all powers. Therefore, a plural for he who is one. Because when he decided to create is when duality was created, and the singular created the plural. And for instance, the word echad in Hebrew is the word which means one. Echad is one. That's why the Shema Israel, one of the most important prayers, and Yahushúa actually said it as part of the first commandment. He said, Shema Israel, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. Yahweh, our Elohim, is one. However, the word one, Echad, is written with 3 letters to show us, as always, the Father, the Son, and the Spirit, or to show us that the Father, who is one, Echad with the Aleph, would come as the first and the last. First to separate as the Het, the letter Het, and then to enter through the door with the sheep, the sheepfold. With the sheep that he would gather and enter the sheepfold. So, Echad has 3 letters representing Yahweh as the first and last. Actually, the Het is normally connected to the second coming, and the Dalet to the first coming, because Yahushúa the first said he is the door. However, the last is coming to gather the chosen few to take him through the door, as we see in the books of the prophets. And as we know, Messiah, through his blood, separated us from the world. So, just like I always say, everything that fulfills, every prophecy that is fulfilled with the first in the flesh will be fulfilled with the last in the spirit, and vice versa. Every prophecy that is fulfilled in the spirit with Messiah, the first, would be fulfilled in the flesh with the last, the second coming. So even though the Dalet is directly connected to Messiah the first because he is the door and the Dalet represents a door, it is the last who will go through the door. It is the last who comes as a poor man in many ways, because he would fall in confusion, and that is poverty. Confusion is poverty. This world, that's why Messiah became poor, so that we would be rich through what he did. However, he never fell in sin, and that is what I was saying. The first became poor spiritually because he came down from the highest heaven to the lowest reality and entered a body made with matter. So he became poor to give us the kingdom. And actually the word Shua means riches and riches. So he became poor to give us all the riches, spiritual riches, of course. So that happened spiritually with him. The last would happen. I said physically. That happened physically because he actually came down from the highest heaven to the lowest reality and entered a body made of matter, flesh, mud. Now the last will fulfill that spiritually, because he would fall in confusion, which would become his spiritual poverty. He would be in poverty by being in fake doctrines, false doctrines. So Echad is the word that means one. Yahweh is Echad, but has 3 letters. Yahweh 1, the Aleph has the value of 1, then the Chet has the value of 8, and then the Dalet has the value of 4. So we have the number 13. So 13 is the numerical value of the word Echad, the word 1. So 13 represents the multiplicity in unity, or how 1, the word 1, has the numerical value of 13. That's why Messiah, who is the head of the congregation, had 12 disciples, so that they would be the body. 13 of them would represent 1. I hope that's clear, and there are so many things that we could say with that, but I'm going to continue with John. It says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. The Word was Elohim. The Word is to whom Yahweh gave the power to create, because Yahweh created everything through the Word, as if he first thought, he being the mind, thought, and the Spirit emanated, and after he thought of what he wanted to make, he spoke, and that's when the Word came out, the Son. So the mind is the Father, the Spirit would be the thought, and the Word that came from that thought would be the Son, the Messiah. And through that word, as it is written, and Elohim said, let there be light. And as we know, Messiah, the Word, is the light. So through the Word, everything was created. The Word is the Messiah, the Son. All things were made through him. We see it here in I went ahead. Verse 2. He was in the beginning with Elohim. He was in the beginning with Elohim. He was from the beginning with the Father. Like I said, Elohim, even though it's plural, is used to refer to the Father, because in him is that all powers are found and all authority comes from him. However, as I have explained before, the word Elohim is also used to refer to angels. That's why also plural. Several angels. Mainly 7 that the Father would use in the beginning of this creation of matter. In the beginning, he would use 7 angels to do certain things. And those were called also Elohim in the lower level. I hope that's clear. So we can also see that even if we were to interpret this as those angels, we are seeing that Yahuhanan, or John, is telling us that everything that those angels or Elohim did was because Yahushúa, the Word, was with them. Meaning, Yahushúa was doing everything through them. I hope that's clear. As when a king says a word, and that word goes into the ears of his servants, and those servants go and do what the king said. So the Creator said, let there be. The word would go and enter certain angels, and those angels would go and do the will of the Father. And that's how many things have been done throughout almost entire human history, until the point in which Messiah came to take over the whole creation and even take it from the angels. I hope that's clear, and I hope it's not confusing, even though there are many things that could be said with it. And I know it's taking me forever to read this, because I was going to read verse 11. I'm just in number 2. So he was in the beginning with Elohim. All things were made through him. All things were made through him. That means that Messiah is not a creation, because all creation was made through the Word. So the Word came directly from the Father. That's why he is the Son. It is different if I were to make a robot than if I were to have a son. Obviously, they would be completely different. The Son would be like me in every way. He would even look like me. However, a robot would just the robot would be whatever I would program it to be, but it would be not like me ever. So that was the point, and that is the point with the difference between a creation and his son, through whom the creation was made. So it's as if the Almighty had a son with the Spirit, and that son decided to create something, make something, because he's the son of the creator. He made it, and that which he made, then he offered the opportunity to become a children of Elohim, and I'm talking about the humans. Because all people, as we are about to see also here, all humans are creations in the beginning. When they are born, they are merely creations. But when they come to the Son and confess his name, the confession of the name of the Son is the seed. As we know in the parable of the sower, the seed is the word of Yahweh. The word of Yahweh is the name. So when we put that seed in our heart, the word of Yahweh, confess it with our mouth, give fruit, as it is written in Hebrews 13:15. Give fruit of lips, which is confessing his name. That means that if we are giving fruit by confessing it, it's because we already put it in our heart and it's growing. So when we give fruit and confess it, we are part of him. When we become part of him, then we become children of the Almighty, children of the Most High. But not before that. So every person that comes to the world is a creation. And that is why many times I hear people from many walks of life, many religions, not necessarily Christian, that claim that they are sons of, as they say, God. And that, I guess I cannot debate that, but for different reasons, as you may know. But most people say they are children of God, no matter their religion, just because they are creations. They do not understand, because perhaps they have not read the scriptures or don't believe in them. They have not seen that there's a difference between a creation and a children. A huge difference, as I just explained. You can make a robot and you can have a child, and they are completely different. Everything about them would be completely different. Even if let's say you don't make anything, you buy a pet. A pet will never, even though it is alive, even though it has flesh like and hair and a bunch of other things, because it is a creation, when we're looking from with our eyes and in a physical way, everybody would know there's a huge difference. So we need to understand that creations and children of Yahweh are two completely different things. And all people, when they are born as creations. That's why Messiah said that it is necessary for men to be born again, because they are first born as creations when they come through water, through the womb of their earthly mother. But then they have to go through the Spirit, which would be the spiritual mother. And the only way to go through the Spirit is by confessing the name of the Son, which is the seed that the Father puts in our heart. As when the Father puts the seed in the woman, and through the woman comes a child, Yahweh is the one who reveals the Son to us, putting his seed in our spirit, in our soul, so that through his Spirit in us, by confessing the name, we may become children of him, but not before that. That's why it is necessary to be born again. So it says here, all things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. Without him nothing was made that was made. So anything that was made through him. All angels, or all authorities, all principalities, all heavens, the earth, the seas, even physical light, of course, because he is the spiritual light. So it says, in him was life. In him was life. And the life was the light of men. This is important because there is, like I said, the physical light. However, there is a spiritual light, and that is Messiah. And the life was the light of men. As we know, the eyes are the lamps of the body. Because the light of men is the life that Yahweh put in us, so that we may be able to walk, talk, and see through these eyes, because we have a light inside, and that is the life. Just like the physical light helps us to see material things, it is the spiritual light in us that helps us to see the world in the sense of reality, as consciousness. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness. Listen to this. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. And the darkness did not comprehend it. Could not capture it, could not understand it. Because it's in darkness, and it's completely the lack of light. So how can darkness understand the light if it lacks that which is basically understanding itself? That's why fire or light is always connected to understanding. For instance, when a person has an idea, you see in cartoons and everything like that a light bulb all of a sudden appears. And the light was the light of men, and the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. So when Messiah came as the light in this world of darkness, he found himself alone, because he was the only one that could comprehend the light that he himself is. Everybody rejected him. The apostles who accepted him because of their faith, but they did not comprehend the light either until he was dead, resurrected, and gave them the Spirit to do so. So that is also interesting. Verse 6 says, there was a man sent from Elohim whose name was Yahuhanan, John the Baptist. This man came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all through him might believe. He was not the light. This is important, and I hope I'm not misunderstood here. Yahuhanan, known as John the Baptist, he was a tzaddik, a just, a righteous person. No doubt about that. Actually, Messiah said that among those born of women, he was the greatest. However, he said also that those in the kingdom of Yahweh, the least of them would be greater than Yahuhanan the Immerser. So we get several things from Messiah to understand regarding this man who came before Messiah 6 months previous. Yahuhanan represents Lucifer, and I hope I repeat, you don't confuse what I'm saying. It represents, I am not saying neither that Lucifer is just or good, nor am I saying that John the Baptist is bad or a rebel as Lucifer. I'm saying he represents that position, and that's why John the Baptist got his head cut off, because he was representing the fact that Lucifer was getting his authority cut off. Because Lucifer came as a lamp, but he wanted to be praised as the light. That's why Lucifer is called he who brings the light, the bearer of the light. A lamp has a light, but is not the light. So Lucifer came as a lamp, and when he saw that people thought that he was the light, he wanted to take that credit, and he started to be worshipped by people and all of that we already know. So Lucifer came as a lamp. People thought he was the light and started worshiping him. Just like John the Baptist appeared, and people thought he was Messiah, but he had to say, no, I'm not the Messiah. Because just like the Torah, which is another interpretation of what Yahuhanan stands for, Yahuhanan the Immerser represents the Torah in the sense that the Torah is not the light. It is a lamp, because through it we can see the light. By reading the Torah, by reading the prophets, the Tanakh, we can see that Messiah is the light. We can understand it, believe it, and all of that. But we cannot worship the letter, because we would end up worshiping the lamp instead of following the light that that lamp is trying to show us, or the light that is coming through that lamp. So Yahuananda Mercer represents that which would end. And that's why Messiah said he is the greater of all those born of women. Just like, as we know, Lucifer was the greatest of all the angels. Lucifer was the highest of the angels. The most beautiful, and all of that you know from reading Ezekiel 28, for instance. So just like John the Baptist was the greatest of all men until that point, hope that's clear, Lucifer was the greatest of all angels in that reality in which he was. But there was a time in which his authority would end, and that was represented by the coming of Messiah. So there was a man sent from Yahweh whose name was John. This man came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all through him might believe. He was not the light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That was the true light, which gives light to every man coming into the world. Remember, it's interesting that soul, the soul of a man, is called in Hebrew nefesh. That is at least the lower level. Nefesh. In the word nefesh, at least in its pronunciation, and at least because of the last letter of it, which is the shin, we have esh, nefesh, which is fire. And obviously, light in this world originally comes from fire. Then they made everything up like lights and all of that. But originally, in this reality, we see light coming from fire. So fire and light are connected. Messiah came as the light. The second coming is as the fire, the consuming fire. Yahushúa is the essence. The second coming is the manifestation. That was the true light, which gives light to every man coming into the world. Coming into the world. When a man is coming into this world, he is the nefesh. But it is until he comes into this world, to put it somewhere, that his nefesh is lit up. That his soul, just like when Adam was created, his body was created, Elohim sent his neshama as the ruach, which entered his nostrils, and he became a living nefesh. So it is as when you light up a fire, a candle, you need air, you need oxygen to keep that fire lit. So the spirit is that air that keeps our soul going, that keeps us alive. It is the spirit. Just as the air keeps the flame going, the spirit keeps us going. The nefesh is as the candle, the flame in the candle. And the neshama is basically what came from the mouth of Yahweh. The fact that we see here who were born, that was the true light, which gives light to every man coming into the world, is as if Yahushúa is the one that lights up every soul as they enter this world through the body that they receive from their parents. Verse 10, which is what I wanted to get to. Verse 10 says, he was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. So huge. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. Which I repeat is so interesting, important, and at the same time kind of logical. The world would not know him because he is not of the world. As he said, his kingdom is not of this world, and that's why they did what they did to him. That's why his servants did not come to rescue him. Obviously, because he had to be fulfilled and all of that, but mainly because this reality was made by him, and he is not part of it, because he is set apart as the Father is set apart. And I mean the Father Yahweh, but also every father in the world is set apart from the procreation of their child. That's why he puts the seed in the mother, and it is within the mother that the child starts growing. So the father is always separated from the mother. He goes to work, the mother, well, wherever she may be at, her body is forming the body of the child, while the parent, the father, is wherever he may be. Because that is to show us how the Almighty is set apart. He keeps himself set apart from creation. And it is in creation itself where all his children would come through. He would put the seed in creation, and from creation we would come through. So when he himself came to the world that he created, the world that he created did not recognize him, because he was not of the world. So it makes a lot of sense. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. But as many as received him, listen to this, but as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of Yahweh. To them he gave the right to become children of Yahweh. And then he clarifies, to those who believe in his name. To those who believe in his name. So I repeat, verse 12, but as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of Yahweh. To those who believe in his name. Not just believe in him, but believe in his name. Who were born, not of blood, meaning not of flesh, not of this world, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of men, but of Yahweh. So not because a pastor wanted to save your soul according to him, or not because whatever the Pope does or says, but because it is his will, the will of Yahweh, that you may become his child. And that's it. Nobody, no man can do anything about it. Whatever Yahweh wills, that will happen. Whatever he wants will happen. So then it says, and the word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we beheld his splendor, the splendor of the only begotten of the Father, full of favor and truth. This verse comes in the book called The Good News of Philip, meaning basically what they would call the Gospel of Philip. Philip, or Philippos, was one of the disciples of Messiah. We see it in scriptures. This book is normally called a Gnostic book, meaning a book that has knowledge. Reason why they took Gnostic books from the people, from the congregation of the Messiah, because it would give them knowledge that the church, the established church, did not want people to have. So this is very important. That's why normally, it is common for me to use sometimes verses from those books. I have read the books, all of them, and I have put them right next to the scriptures, and there are no contradictions. People who find contradictions are because, basically the reason is because they have not understood scriptures first, and they already want to understand something that may be more mysterious or deeper. Not deeper because scriptures is deep enough. Just the fact that they want to read the Gnostic books without first understanding scriptures, or first having gone throughout all scriptures several times, and they end up confusing certain things that are said in those books, since they are very mysterious. No doubt they are mysterious. So I repeat, the Gnostic books, basically what they call Gnostic books, do not go against the scriptures. They actually agree with scriptures. However, they are very mysterious, so that there are people that do not get the point and believe that they go against scriptures in a lot of things. So that's why you will hear Christian pastors talking against these books, saying that it brings heresy or blasphemies, But it is, I repeat, because they don't understand what it is being said actually, because it is being said in a spiritual way, and they are expecting to find everything in a physical or by the letter. The verse is in the Gospel of Philip, a very, very important book, I believe. And I will read the verse 12 and then the verse 19. You cannot have different versions of an original. If you have different versions, they are not the real one. And if they're not the real one, then they're not what Yahweh meant when he said the name above every name. If he had several versions, that verse would have said the name and the versions above every name and versions. So we cannot include other words, other things. Not necessarily bad, since the other languages that originated at Babel were created by Yahweh. People that say this are saying it because they think that names change. They think that a name changes. And even though I know, for instance, the name Pedro in Spanish as the name Peter would be the equivalent in English. However, if a person is born and given the name Pedro, if the person is called Pedro and he goes to the United States, he would call himself Pedro because that is his name. Even though there is an English version that sometimes English speaking people use to put their children, Peter. There are people who are named Pedro and then they go to a place where they speak English and they want to be called Peter, but it is because they want to pose as a person that is native to that country, for instance, or that language. So if a person is called Pedro, that is his name forever. Yeah, there is a version in English of that name, Peter, but that is for people who are given that name from birth and they keep that name forever. Even though there are connections between those names in Spanish and English, if you receive one, that is the one you have forever, and that is important to understand. Also, Peter and Pedro are close, are similar. We can see why they're similar, and the meaning is the same. However, Yahushúa and Jesus or Jesus are two completely different names, are not like Peter and Pedro. I would say Peter and Pedro, perhaps those who say Yahushua and Yahusha, for instance, because there are certain issues, and even there were certain issues with people back in the day when it came to certain pronunciations, even back in the day, and we see it in scriptures. The name Yahushua and the name Jesus, you can see, are completely different. On the other hand, not only do they sound completely different, the name Yahushua has the name of the Father in it. The name Jesus doesn't. Actually has the name Zeus in it, which has to do with Satan. So that should be enough. But anyways, if we want to keep going, the meaning of Yahushua is he who causes to exist saves. The meaning of Jesus is, well, is obscure. Some say it doesn't have a meaning at all because it's just a perversion that came through many years of changes. But depending on the language, for instance, in Hebrew, it can be translated, some translated as the vision of Zeus, others translated as behold the horse. So Jesus means behold the horse. Jesus, basically, behold the horse. In Latin, it means the pig from the earth, Jesus. And in Greek, it means God is Zeus. So all the definitions that we find of the name Jesus, according to the pronunciation in different languages, are completely against of what the name Yahushua means. So they are pronounced completely different. They are from two different times in history. One is Latin, one is Hebrew. They have completely different meanings. So one cannot say that it is the same or is another version of it, because at least Peter and Pedro mean the same, sound similar. And even if they are similar and have the same meaning, when a person receives a name when they are born, that is the name that they keep forever. And unless they are a little bit fake, it would feel very weird to be called something else, even though it has the same meaning. Unless it is a nickname, unless it is because of love or something like that. But a nickname, different than just a name that has to do with your enemy, because that would be an insult. So look at how one of the apostles, meaning just a few years after Messiah leaving earth, he was already saying that the name of the Messiah was being taken out. 2,000 years ago, the name of the Messiah was already being taken out of the vocabulary of people. And we saw that the Pharisees would prohibit the apostles from doing so. We read it in Acts. Now we see it in Philippus. The only name that is not pronounced amongst the mundane is the name with which the Father exalts the Son. This name is superior to all, because it's the name above every name. This is the Father, because the Father became the Son. He became flesh, as we just read in John. This is the Father. Then it says, the Son would not have received this name if he would not have become the Father. What name? Yahushúa. He would not have received Yahu if he had not become Yahweh. Meaning when he resurrected, he received all power from Yahweh, even more than he had before dying, because he was exalted. So the Son would not have received this name, Yahushúa, if he would not have become the Father. And as we know, Messiah, before he left, even though he always treated his disciples as brothers and sisters, before he left, he said that he would not left them as orphans, meaning that he was about to become the Father, meaning that the second coming is as the Father. Like I always say, the first coming was as the Son, the second coming as the Father. So the Son would not have received this name if he would not have become the Father. Those who carry this name know it. This is important. Those who carry this name know it. This is like when in the book of Revelation we see that the chosen are going to receive a name that only they know. Only the one who receives it knows it. Just like the book of Revelation 19:13 says, well, 19, when he's talking about the word of Yahweh being the name of the Son, it says that he has a name that only he knows. So that means only he knows, and those who are in the congregation are one with him. So only the real congregation will understand and accept the name, because those who have it know it. But if you don't have it, then you won't never know it or understand it, and that's why they reject it. Those who have this name know it, but don't speak about it. As in, obviously we preach of him, but we do not go into well, for instance, when we talk to a person that doesn't know anything about it, about the name, we cannot go into very deep details, because that would cause them to actually reject it, because it would be so hard for them to understand, who are just starting, that it would be too much for them. Basically as if you end up eating so much food that you end up getting indigestion or something like that. So when we receive a doctrine, when we receive a teaching, we are eating spiritual food. There are certain people that can't eat flesh in the sense of meat, spiritual meat. There are some who are just starting and they can only have milk. As a baby, can only have milk until he grows up to a point where he can have solid foods. So that is the point, in a way, with this. Those who have this name know it, but don't speak about it. And those who don't have this name don't even realize about the existence of the first. So the many who do not have the name do not realize that we exist. They know that we exist, but they think that we are so wrong that they actually discard us among the many false doctrines and false prophets and all of that. So they don't understand that there is a congregation that is even higher regarding the true doctrine in that sense. So there are some who claim to follow him but do not have the name. And those who claim to follow him but do not have the name do not understand and therefore do not know those who have the name and know the name. That is verse 12. Verse 19 is the main one that I wanted to mention for this question. Verse 19 says, Yahushúa, and please listen to this. This is in a book written by one of the apostles. They took it out of scriptures. Why? Maybe because of this, among other things. Yahushúa is a human name, meaning it is the name of a human, personal name, to ID him. Yahushúa is a human name. Messiah is a title. As we know, Messiah is the transliteration of Mashiach. Mashiach means anointed. So it's basically saying Yahushúa is a human name. Anointed is a title. That's why we can say anointed, because it's the definition of Mashiach, which is Hebrew. Messiah is a word that they transliterated in order to have a similar to Mashiach without translating it into anointed. But why do I sometimes use anointed? Why sometimes I use Mashiach or Messiah? But I always use Yahushúa? Because what Philip is saying here, Yahushúa is his name. That should not be changed. A title can be changed according to the language. A person that is a boss in a company in the United States comes to Costa Rica and he will be called a jefe. So boss, jefe is the same thing in different languages. But that jefe, if his name is John in the United States, he comes here and you better call him John because he might fire you if you start calling him Juan. So there are differences. And I repeat, this time I use an equivalent name in a different language. Juan and John, we can see the similarity. And it's the same, well, that wouldn't have a meaning unless we go back to the real name, which would be Yahuhanan. But anyways, my point, Yahushúa is a human name. Mashiach is a title. Listen to this, Philip speaking. That is why the name Yahushúa does not have equivalents in other languages. This is to answer to any Christian that says that it doesn't matter how you call him in that the languages have different names for him. That is why the name Yahushúa does not have equivalents in other languages. Simply, he was named Yahushúa. So even Philip is saying this is simple. His name is Yahushúa. Don't change it. It's a human name. That is his name. It doesn't have different type of names in different languages. It's just one name for all languages. Just like Adolf Hitler is called the same in every language. Donald Trump, I mean, people who are not very important. Of course, they are important to the Father in the sense that they are part of creation. But they are not, they did not, well, I'm talking, Hitler did not do good for the world. Most people talk bad about him. Yet, everybody respects his name since they call him by his real name, no matter what language they speak. The same with other leaders of the world. The Prime Minister of Israel. Many Christians love to support Israel even though they are not descendants of Israel. Jacob, but that's another story. So they support the Prime Minister, and you can ask any Christian that knows a little bit about it, what is the name of the Prime Minister of Israel? They would say Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu. That's what they would say, most likely, if you ask somebody that knows about it. in English. Benjamin Netanyahu. They will not say Benjamin Netanyahu. They will not say Benjamin Netanyahu. They will say Benjamin Netanyahu. So how come they can say the Yahoo in Netanyahu, but they cannot say the Yahoo in Yahushua? How come they say Netanyahu no matter the language? Because he's from Israel. But when it comes to the Messiah, who is a true Israelite, they say, no, we call him whatever we want because we were born with a different language than him. That doesn't make any sense. So I repeat verse 19 in the Good News of Philip. Yahushua is a human name. Messiah is a title. That is why the name of Yahushua does not have equivalents in other languages. Simply, he was named Yahushua. So I hope that's clear. Why has Yahweh allowed that for all this time? Both names had been corrupted. Is this awakening of the names recent? First of all, well, there's so many things to be said regarding this point. First of all, we got to understand, Yahweh gave humans free will. That is the first key. With that, we have the answer for everything, but then we can go deeper if we want to understand a little bit more. Why does that answer everything? Because Yahweh said, okay, I give you my name. Part of the 10 commandments we have, do not destroy the name, the third commandment. So he gave us the commandment not to do it. He allowed it because he allows us to do wrong. He allows humans to do their own will instead of the will of the Father. So it was the will of the Father for his name to keep set apart. So he left a commandment. Humans didn't understand the commandment and started breaking it. However, the way they started breaking it, the Father used it in a way to keep himself set apart. So it's how amazingly beautiful the Almighty works. At the end, his will be done. No matter what, his will be done. Even when humans do not want to do his will be done. I repeat it again so that you understand what I meant. Men started to go against his will, so they started to hide the name, forbid people from using the name. Even though the Father said, don't destroy the name, respect the name. But the fact that Satan came in the middle and started to change the name in order for him to be worshipped through a false name, his own name, like Baal, Lord, etc. When he started doing that, what he was actually doing was creating a false doctrine, basically a veil done through the letter, so that those who are not true, those who are not faithful truly to the Father Almighty would get stuck. So the fact that men did not want to do the will of the Father, the fact that the Father wanted to keep himself set apart, and an angel started to change things in order for him to get the worship, was the way in which Yahweh basically kept himself set apart from creation, while the creation that did not want him but wanted an illusion, a lie, falseness, would get stuck in that filter. Now, we know Yahweh is the only one who knows the heart. He will judge people by what is in their heart. That's why we are justified by what we believe in our heart. Romans 10:10. We are justified by what we believe in our heart. So people will be justified after death if they did not have the names, but their heart was in the right place, meaning they loved the Almighty without knowing his name with all their heart, all their mind, all their soul. If they love their neighbor as themselves, that's it. They're entering the kingdom as the people of the kingdom. But there is a higher level as a king. And those who will be kings and queens will be those who during these end times will not only believe in their hearts, but will also confess with their mouths, give fruit. So that would take me to the second question. The revelation of the names is kind of a new thing. For many people, it's completely new, of course, and that will be the case with each and every person that you go and teach it to through your ministry that the Father may give you. So until the end, it will be new for a lot of people. But for instance, I learned this about 13 years ago. And when I learned it, it seemed like I was the only one that knew it, even though I learned it from a book that I read. I want to make that clear. It was a really good book that went really deep when it comes to the name of the Father, the Son, and many wrong titles and names that people use. The book is called The Final Reformation, and you can find it for free on the internet. The guy that made it, actually did it on purpose to put it for free. It's not, basically he made it available. There's only one thing that I don't agree with him. There's only one thing throughout all the book, and I'm pretty sure it's not even, maybe if you read it, you may not notice it. But if anything, if you have any questions after you read it, if you want to read it, let me know if you have any questions, and I will be glad to help you. But anyways, that was the book I read like 13 years ago, and to me it was amazing, and it took me a while to process it and all of that. But I've been preaching it for 13 years, so to me, it's been a while. But I understand that for most people, it's completely new, and that'll be the case as we go along preaching it. But nowadays, it is a lot easier to find information about it. There are a lot of people that know it if you actually search for it. When I learned it, I repeat, I went into the internet and I only found like a couple more people or sites that would speak about it. And I repeat, I gotta be honest, I do not agree with everything. I would love that every person that has the name Yahushua automatically, I would love, and it would be awesome if every person that has the name Yahushua automatically has the good doctrine, the right doctrine. However, that is not the case. You can have a key, but not use it. You can have a key and not go through the door. And there are many other analogies that we can make. So the people that come to know the name, sometimes they think that when I speak about the name and the importance of the name, they think that I'm talking about a magical word or something like that, that you just say it and everything is perfect in your life. And that is not the case. It is the beginning. That's why Yahushua said that he is the way. So we must walk, but we have to start through his name. So there are people who know the name, yet they don't search for the Father, or I don't know, whatever it may be. And they have doctrines that do not go along with the scriptures, and therefore I don't agree with everything they say. And I'm just saying that so that we may be on the same page, that even though there are people who have the name, that doesn't mean that every person that has the name will agree on everything, as it happens also with those that don't have it, of course. However, one thing that I will say for sure is that the two witnesses that will appear on earth will say a doctrine that can be verified throughout all the scriptures in every way and will not break apart like those doctrines that I am mentioning. So, to answer that question once again, Luke 16, this is very important parable. I'm going to read from verse 1 regarding the question that made by Angelica, but like I said, this is important for all of us to understand. Why would the Father allow for his name to be changed? Mainly because he gives us free will. That is the main key. But why would, or how can he, through our free will, end up getting his own will done? That is interesting, I believe. His power. So we read in verse 1, he also said to his disciples, talking about Messiah, there was a certain rich man who had a steward, and an accusation was brought to him that this man was wasting his goods. This is like Lucifer. The rich man would be the Almighty. He had Lucifer as a steward, but Lucifer started to waste the goods that were supposed to be for the Almighty. He started to use them in himself. So there was a certain rich man who had a steward, and an accusation was brought to him that this man was wasting his goods. So he called him and said to him, what is this I hear about you? Give an account of your stewardship, for you can no longer be steward. As when Yahweh told Lucifer that he was out of the job. Then the steward said within himself, what shall I do? For my master is taking the stewardship away from me. I cannot dig. I am ashamed to beg. I have resolved what to do, that when I am put out of the stewardship, they may receive me into their houses. So Lucifer, when he was kicked out of the favor of the Almighty, Lucifer said, okay, I have to come up with a plan so that people will receive me in their hearts, in their houses. They will accept me. They will invoke me. They will look for me. This is Lucifer talking, of course, right? So this is important. This parable is so powerful because it teaches us a bunch of things. It says, so he called every one of his master's debtors to him and said to the first, how much do you owe my master? And he said, 100 measures of oil. So he said to him, take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. Then he said to another, how much do you owe? So he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said to him, take your bill and write 80. So the master commended the unjust steward because he had dealt shrewdly. He was as the serpent that was the wisest of all the beasts that were in the garden, Lucifer. So even though he did wrong, Yahweh, for he is good and he can only say positive things about everything, he saw the shrewdness in the steward, the unjust steward, the unrighteous steward. So the unrighteous is not taken from him. He's still unrighteous. However, the way he acted was wise. And he says, for the sons of this world are more shrewd in their generation than the sons of the light. Which is something, also another teaching that we could talk about, how the fact that we came through this world in which we have experience that angels do not have in the world that they live in, makes it so that we become a lot more, I guess I could say, wiser than the angels. So it says, and I want to make it clear, wiser than the angels when we get the spirit of truth, the spirit of Messiah. We get a revelation that they never got and they do not understand. And that's why we are in a fight against principalities and authorities. So it says, this is the key of the teaching. And I say to you, make friends for yourself by unrighteous mammon, by unrighteous riches, fortune. In Hebrew, the word that they translate as mammon, the Hebrew word is God. Isn't that interesting? The Hebrew word that they translate in Greek as mammon is God. And you can check it even in your King James Version in Isaiah 65:11. So it says, and I say to you, make friends for yourself by unrighteous God. What does that mean in the context in which we are taking it regarding the name? We should do everything good possible, even when we were in a false doctrine. Even when we were in a false doctrine, receiving a teaching that was not truth, was not according to the truth, which is Messiah. Even if we were there, if we acted correctly, even if we had something wrong in our understanding of things, if we were doing in our heart everything to do good, while we had unrighteous God, unrighteous fortune, and unrighteous teaching, and I say to you, make friends for yourselves by unrighteous God, that when you fail, they may receive you into an everlasting home. That when you fail, they may receive you into an everlasting home. Meaning that even when they are worshiping God in an unrighteous fortune, doctrine, false doctrine, once they fail, once they die, they will be justified because they did what was right, even though they did not understand everything about what they were doing. And I mean What was right by the fact that they believe in the death and resurrection of Messiah for their sins. What was right by the fact that they love their neighbor as themselves. So, and I say to you, make friends yourself by unrighteous God, that when you fail, they may receive you into an everlasting home. He who is faithful, this is the key point. He who is faithful, excuse me. He who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much. And he who is unjust in what is least is unjust also in much. This verse is one of the reasons why Yahweh allowed this. I repeat, we can take it as a filter. So like those Pharisees who claim to know the Father and who claim to teach about the Father got stuck in that veil, in that filter, because they were hypocrites. They were full of leaven. So they could not enter the kingdom. They got stuck in the filter. Unrighteous God. Nowadays the same thing is happening. Prosperity gospel and all of that. Unrighteous God. There are certain people who are in those congregations. They see those things and they realize they are wrong. Yet they don't understand or can figure out a way to get out of that doctrine, or they don't know what doctrine to go to. They don't know what to do. They end up dying in that congregation or church. But they did not agree with those bad things, and they did in their lives everything that was possible to do the will of the Father. They will be justified. When they fail, they will be received in an everlasting home. He who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much. In Spanish, I would say there is a better translation for this. And well, I'm sure in English there may be another one. Let me see if I find it. Well, I'll just translate it as the other translations I have seen. When it says least, there are other translations that write fake or false, as in an illusion. This world is an illusion, it's fake, it's temporal, therefore it's false, because the only thing that is true is that which is eternal. So whatever is temporal is an illusion that will pass, that is fake, and is the least, because the eternal is much, basically, is all. So he who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much. The Almighty made that filter, allowed that filter to happen, as in the desert. Remember, Egypt, the desert, and the promised land. The desert is the filter. The desert is the veil. Yahweh allowed that desert so that, yeah, everybody wanted to come out of slavery. Great. But now who really wants to be in the presence of the Almighty? Not everybody. Many people just wanted to come out of slavery. Many people just wanted to prosper. Many people just wanted to be happy according to what they think happiness is, not according to the will of the Father. So they died. They failed in the desert until those who really believed, the two witnesses, Caleb and Yahushúa, actually entered the promised land. So Yahweh allows that filter, that veil, the false names, the false religions, to see within the desert, within those congregations, who is faithful in the least. Because the veil, the filter, false doctrines are the least, are an illusion of the true congregation, are just a fake congregation. But it works to see who is looking for the true congregation. So Yahweh will look in the hearts of those who are in the least, in the false doctrines, in the wrong name, and whoever is faithful in the least, Yahweh knows that he will be faithful in much. So that is when he comes to him through one of us, for instance, and reveals the name to that person. That person realizes that the Father is speaking to him, wants to know him better, and that person will realize that that is the way out that he was expecting, out of the least, out of that desert, out of that filter. So once the person understands, he gets out and enters the promised land. And that's why the promised land was not entered through Moshe, was entered through Yahushúa, after 3 days when they passed the Jordan, again without getting wet, which means the 144,000 entering the promised land, the set apart place, Revelation 12, without going through death. So he who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much, and he who is unjust in what is least is unjust also in much. So Yahweh will look and he sees, okay, this person has been in this congregation forever and he keeps sinning, he keeps doing the same thing, he keeps thinking the same things, he keeps speaking the same things. I'm not going to reveal myself to him. I'm not going to bring him to the much. I'm going to keep him in the least. I'm not going to bring him to the reality of eternity. I'm going to keep him in the illusion that is temporal, that false doctrine. So that is the key point of why the filter, why Yahweh allowed that. Because certain people are not faithful, so they should not be among the chosen. So all are in sin. From all of those, many came out, and that's why many are called. But from those many who are called, a few are chosen. That is important. If you have not been faithful in the unrighteous God, who will commit to you, who will commit to your trust the true riches? This is so huge. Here, the word riches is added so that we understand what it's trying to say, but actually adding it causes a problem. Because here we are seeing what I was just explaining. Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the unrighteous God, who will commit to your trust the truth? If you are not faithful when you have the lie, how can you expect for the Father to give you the truth, which is set apart and pure? And the way that it says is amazing. If by following unrighteous God, people were unrighteous, how can they expect the Father to give them that which is eternal, the truth? They were following the lie and they are unfaithful. They will not receive the truth, which is Messiah. And that's why it's also written in Thessalonians, because they did not have love for the truth. Because of that, Yahweh will send a lying wonder, basically, so that those who did not believe in the truth may end up believing in the lie, the false Messiah. So therefore, if you have not been faithful in the unrighteous God, who will commit to your trust the truth? The true Messiah, the true Elohim. If people are not righteous to the with the false Elohim, how can they expect that they will come to know the real one? While the real one is set apart. So he will not allow anybody to know him unless that person is set apart also. Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the unrighteous God, who will commit to your trust the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in what is another man's, listen, and if you have not been faithful in what is another man's, who will give you what is your own? So if we have not been faithful with the doctrine of certain men, the doctrines of men, how can we expect to receive the doctrine of the man, the sovereign, with whom we would become one and therefore would be ours, our own? How can we get our own if we do not take care of that which we borrow? How can we receive our own things from the Father if when he allowed us to borrow something or get something lent from somebody, if we didn't use it correctly, if we didn't care about it, if we misused it, how can we expect to receive that which is eternal if we didn't take care of the temporal? So when a person says that doesn't matter, it's kind of showing that it is not, he or she is not being faithful in the unrighteous God. And if you have not been faithful in what is another man's, who will give you what is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve Yahweh and God. you cannot serve Yahweh and God. So when people say both in the same sentence, as if it was the same, it shows that they are not being faithful. They don't understand what they are doing. Because it says right here, you cannot love or serve both, either one or the other. There are certain times in which people are in the false doctrine and they fell in love with the lie. So they actually love unrighteous God. And when you come with Yahweh and the name of the Son Yahushúa, they are completely against it because they actually love the lie. So they actually hate the truth that you are bringing to them. And that shows when they start showing that hate towards you. While others who actually love the truth yet have not known it because they were under a lie, when you come to them and show them the light, the truth, they will see it, understand it, and follow it right away. And they will show that they actually love Yahweh and not the unrighteous God.